Would you like to keep the literature or switch? Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to Science on Tap. Thank you all for coming out. Science on Tap brings curiosity together with the community to have great conversations. I'm really excited about tonight's topic. I've helped out in disaster areas after they've happened in the region, and I'm really interested in learning more about this great technology that was developed by the EPA in partnership with a company I can't remember, but Dr. Goodrich will know. So thank you all for coming out.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, it's interesting being over here. I work with the EPA Office of Research and Development. We're in a big concrete bunker up on next to UC. And we also have a test facility down on Guest Street on the wastewater treatment plant's location. So very big water research group here in Cincinnati, part of EPA's nationwide research program. I'm in the Homeland Security Research Program, part of the Center for Environmental Solutions and Emergency Response. Is that right, Brian? Okay. Caesar. Hail Caesar. It's cool to be back here. I went to Western Hills High School, grew up on the other side of Mount Airy Forest in Green Township. So this kind of stomping grounds a little bit. So, went to UC, Florida State, came back to UC. So been over at EPA most of my life. Well, yeah, most of my life. But so anyway, this is something that's evolved over the last 10 years or so. And it's our water on wheels mobile emergency water treatment system. So what I'll do is I'll go over how it came to be, go over the components of it so you can get a feel for what it does. It was originally designed for following a natural disaster when a water system is under a boil water advisory. Their water systems, they lost power, their drinking water is compromised, and bottled water is just not the answer to everything. And so, but now it's been getting used by the Corps of Engineers and the Army, and so there's some military applications for it. And the state of Kentucky they're really taking the lead nationwide in deploying these. And so we'll get into that. And so I think you can probably agree that bottled water is not the answer to everything. It's good if you're drinking it right now, but you can't shower with it, laundry, cook. You can't run your kitchen with bottled water, and you just can't do general cleanup with bottled water. Plus, you can have hundreds of thousands of plastic water bottles that you have to dispose of. It's a solid waste nightmare. So the idea is to reduce the environmental footprint of the natural disaster responses. And that really came about from the city of Louisville. Several years ago, they had water main breaks downtown, large main breaks, and they were within hours of having to move the city prison, the city jail, and the juvenile detention center, all the residents of those institutions, to hotels, because they had no water. So the financial and the liability behind something like that, and a local NGO in Louisville called WaterStep, they've been doing things like this around the world, but not within the United States. And so they had these components, and they put these drinking water treatment devices on a dolly and just brought them around, and that was in response to Louisville's request. I was sitting in the cut of the hill on 75 coming to work one morning, stuck in traffic, and there's this truck in front of me called WaterStep. I had a picture of shoes. What does it have to do with water? So I finally get in the office, I looked them up, talked to them, and found out what they did. So what we did is that we developed this CRADA, a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, where we can work directly with private companies or nonprofits. We don't give them any money, but they have access to our facilities, our contractors, and they bring their expertise. And so in developing products or devices under these CRADAs, then we can co-patent it. And so the government and WaterStep this is now patented. And the government can get royalties from the sale of the WaterStep, of the wild card. And so what it is, it's portable, because the mobile water systems that are kind of out in the industry now are like a semi-tractor trailer. You got 53 feet of a tractor trailer with the most expensive, sophisticated water treatment technology there, and you got to be an expert to operate it. And a lot of times you can't even get it to where it needs to be because it's such a big tractor trailer, and there's not that many of them. So this is going to be portable. The whole thing weighs less than 500 pounds. We brought it here today in the back of a pickup truck. 2 guys put it on ramps into the back of the pickup truck, strapped it down, brought it here. You can plug it into a wall outlet, your 110 outlet, and you can see it's built to work inside as well. It's just not outside. It fits through doorways. It can also run off a generator. A dual fuel generator comes with it, gasoline or propane. It travels with it. Underneath, it's got a little canopy on it. I didn't bring the generator, but you don't have the generator going one place and the wild card going somewhere else. So, you got gas, propane, or wall outlet. That's the only power required. It also has a solar blanket that you can run some of the components off a battery and the solar panel. While you're treating water, it's got microfilters like you might have under your sink. Then it's got granular activated carbon, which removes chemicals out of your water. It's got a UV LED light for disinfection, and it also produces chlorine gas for disinfection. So it's the same treatment train that the Cincinnati Water Works has. Almost virtually the same steps. At the same time, it also can produce a bleach solution. You got the little jugs. I'll show you a better picture here in a minute. While you're treating water, you can take a little probe, a little salt water, a little electricity, and within an hour, you've got basically a Clorox solution. So during an emergency, the shelves that get emptied at Walmart, the bottled water and bleach. So those are the 2 main things. So all that comes on the cart. And literally, when you get to the site, you can have this up and running in an hour. I know the slide, 1 to 3 hours, If it takes 3 hours, you've got too many PhDs working on it. You just really need, just common sense kind of things. And in one of our applications, over 3 weeks of this running, 6 different NGOs over those 3 weeks were trained and operated it. The original WaterStep got the first group going, they told the second group, they told the third group, and so on. And it just worked flawlessly for those 3 weeks. It produces about 8 to 10 gallons per minute. So on an easy day, it can produce 10 or 15,000 gallons of water. And the only thing it uses is the power, the electricity, and salt. A little salt, a shot glass full of common table salt, electricity, you're producing chlorine gas or a chlorine bleach solution. That's all there is to it. So basically, made in Louisville, something like that could be made in a couple weeks. So many parts are just prefabricated. It's the sticker price on the basic model might be $40,000 for everything. I'll show you in a slide later on that one use pays for itself far and away over what the bottled water costs coming in. As I said, it's easy to operate. People can come in. You don't have to have an operator's license to do it. And the parts of the cart, the components, the chlorine gas generator, the bleach maker, so on, they've been used around the world for 20 years. So there's a good track record for it. And it's easily stored. You can put that in a hallway in a basement somewhere, and it can be pre-deployed. So here is kind of the parts of it. You can throw a hose into a lake, into a tanker truck that's brought water. You have a jet pump here. It can pull water almost 20 feet up out of the ground, out of a well or a pond or a river. Comes up, there's the pre-filters. These are a couple different kinds of pre-filters. I've got different examples of filters down here if you want to check those out later. We've got different types over here. So that's the pre-filters. Then it goes through granular activated carbon. That can be for, if there's some kind of diesel fuel spill or some chemical that needs to be removed. Then it moves over. You have the UV LED. It's not the UV bulbs. The chlorine gas generator, and then goes out into these bladder tanks. It comes with 2 bladder tanks. That's a 1,250 gallon bladder tank, and that's it right there. When it's being shipped, that can go right on top of the cart and just travel with it. It unfolds, holds 1,200 gallons of water, and so your raw or treated water can go into that bladder tank. And you see there's about partially filled there in the back. On the back side, there's also USB ports, plugs, so you need to recharge your phone, your laptop. And I've been wanting to put a coffee maker on it for a long time, but it hadn't happened yet. But coming here, I think now we need to put a tap on it. And my boss got really carried away. He wanted, well, you put a tap on that, then you can call it wow beer or beer on wheels. So that might be in one of our strategic research action plans a couple years out. So be on the lookout for that, Brian. This is the chlorine gas generator. All it is a little round cylinder. There's a membrane in between. You put, like I say, a shot glass full of common table salt on one side. You add water to it, electricity. Chlorine gas starts getting generated, and it gets sucked into the treatment train and put into the water. Basically, that's all there is to it. A lot of times, WaterStep takes these in their backpacks on the planes to wherever they go around the world, hanging off the village or the community's storage tank, and starts chlorinating the water, just with that a little bit of electricity and salt. This is the UVC LED unit. This is a company over in Northern Kentucky, off of Mineola Pike. They make different applications, and we didn't want the typical UV bulbs that are glass, have mercury. This thing's being taken all over the country, wheeled over ground. These bulbs aren't going to last. So the UV LED, we did a cradle with that company at our test and evaluation facility, and kind of tested it for Legionella. Mainly what we do in our testing is we have an anthrax surrogate, since I'm in the Homeland Security program. So there's an anthrax surrogate that's safe to use. We use malathion, which is a nerve agent surrogate, and we have a non-radioactive cesium particle. So that's kind of our little recipe for what we challenge our devices with. So we did that with the UV unit, and we incorporated that into the cart. And this is the bleach maker, just little jugs, or little 5-liter jugs. So once again, you put salt in there. There's a probe that sits down in there. Hit it with electricity. In an hour, you've got a solution of bleach that's equivalent to taking your Clorox, a cup of Clorox and a gallon of water. That solution is what we produce. And so that can be used for just general sanitation. A lot of times this is like for medical triage. It's strong enough that it can wipe out blood and things like that following disasters. So we've been using this. I'll show you 3 different deployments for natural disasters. Like I say, the Kentucky agencies have used it extensively. They're all on board with it. The Corps of Engineers are now adapting it to their applications. 5 of these have gone to Ukraine. They were shipped. Everything was translated into Ukraine. It was shipped to Poland, and then somehow it got from Poland into Ukraine. And we have no idea where they're at, that they're being used or not. And then the state of Kentucky, they have 14 state prisons. And they have just gone through a process where they bought 2 wild carts for every one of those prisons. Because oftentimes in a natural disaster, these prisons are kind of the last thing people think of, or they're on their own systems. So that's all part of the state concept I'll go into towards the end. And then I'll go into the Lake Charles, Louisiana response, which was, there's videos on here. It won't play here, but if you get a copy of the presentation, you can play these videos and get a little bit more detail on that. But in Lake Charles, Louisiana, This was Hurricane Laura in October 2020. WaterStep took their cart down to, it was a mega church in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It was their parking lot. It was the base camp for 800 first responders. And so the wild cart was deployed for about 3 weeks, produced about 800,000 or 100,000 gallons of water, which is equivalent to 800,000 plastic bottles of water. And so you just kind of do the back of the envelope, calculation. That water itself would have cost almost $200,000 at a dime a bottle. And then to get it there, it's either 20 C-130s or 16 tractor trailers just to get it there. And so with $40,000 for one wild cart, just one use of it, you can see the return on that investment just makes a whole lot of sense. And it was also in this was the example where we had the 6 different NGOs that came through the base camp and were operating it. At peak, they were producing 16,000 meals a day for the local community and the first responders. And so they're bringing in tanker trucks of water. It was put into the bladder tank. The wild cart treated it and sent it on to the kitchen, showers, and laundry. And so more recently, in between that and a couple other disaster responses, the Corps of Engineers have gotten involved, both for, I'll show you some non-military applications as well as military. You may not know it, but in the United States, there are tens of thousands of relief wells. These are pressure relief wells that are on the downstream side of dams or along levees. And that is to reduce that water pressure. Behind these dams, all that water pressure is trying to push water through the dam. So these wells relieve that pressure. And there's water flowing out of them all the time behind the dams. But they get clogged up, corroded, biofilm, slime. So the Corps of Engineers, like every 5 years, have to do each one of these and decon them. And what they've done, well, this was Grenada Lake, Mississippi, northern Mississippi. The dam there is almost 1.5 miles long. And so there's probably 200 of these relief wells that are running all the time. So if one of those wells gets plugged up, that can cause a failure and the whole dam can go. And so we also did this on levees, which run for hundreds of miles along the Mississippi, just above Vicksburg. And what the Corps of Engineers had been doing is where the well cart's sitting now, they had a pallet of oxalic acid. So the poor guys in the Mississippi summer had to bust open these bags of acid, powdered acid, mix it in that tank, and then pump it down into the well and let it sit for an hour and then pump it back out. And so we instituted the well cart instead of the acid. We can do twice as many wells in a day, and so they can probably cut that interval down to about every 3 years. And so the Corps of Engineers is now reorienting their SOPs to replace the acid with that. Then the Army has some applications both for fixed installations and for their mobile forces. And so we built a military version of the WOW cart. They call it the DRIPS, Deployable Resilient Infrastructure, portable system, DRIPS. The military's got acronyms for everything. But so it's got chemical coating, spatial chemical resistant coating, it's camo, there's a telemetry, it's got GPS on it. You can go into the cloud and see if it's producing water, if it's producing chlorine. And there's what we call the WOW wagon. You can see on the one picture that the big wheels. You can lift the cart up, set it on this little carrier, and they can go on the back of an ATV or four-wheeler, and they can just haul it wherever they want. And so this was demonstrated at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And then we took it to Fairbanks, Alaska in March. And what the military is doing is that they're experimenting with mobile barracks and office supplies, kitchens, and so on. They're self-sufficient. They have their own microgrid. But then they got to be able to produce water and treat the wastewater. So the military version of the WOW cart, we went up to Fairbanks and got it in one of these mobile facilities. And this is designed for both Arctic and desert environments for the troops as they're out in the field. And so this is us getting it into the little building. It's just 2 container cars slapped together, and that's their offices or whatever. Then, we go from March in Alaska to Virginia in June, the middle of Virginia. So I got to get those reversed. But this was an Army exercise. It was a liquid logistics exercise where they were moving fuel and water all over the country with reserves and National Guards and Army units. And so we were on this 40-acre pond in the middle of Virginia. We were like 2 miles away from Appomattox. And so we were there with the military's reverse osmosis systems. And you can see you got the GIs taking it off the back of the trailer and just setting it in place. On the left there is the reverse osmosis machine that the military called their ROPUs. It didn't work the entire 2 weeks because the membranes hadn't been cared for or stored properly. So for the entire time, that unit didn't work. Now it would take 3 of our carts to produce the same amount of water as that, but it would still only cost about a third. Plus ours worked, theirs didn't. So it was kind of neat. There we are under camo, treating water, and the troops were drinking it. So what we're going to be doing, it just came, they were down in Camp Shelby, Mississippi in July. They are combining it with a Navy unit that does gray water reuse. So you have your gray water systems, your reuse, and then the wild cart or the drips as the polishing step. And so we're working on that. Next year, it may go up to Greenland, to Fort Patufic, with the Space Force base, about as far north as you can get on the globe. So that will be another Arctic experiment. Internally at EPA, we're looking at what can we add on that to treat heavy metals like arsenic, fluoride, brackish water. The cool thing about the military units is that the RO, you can stick a hose in the ocean and make water. A lot of times in the U.S., you just don't need that. But there may be brackish groundwater. So heavy metals, groundwater, and for anything that's radioactive. If there is some sort of nuclear accident or dirty bomb or something, we need to be able to treat for that. And then the Corps of Engineers wants to scale it up to about 100,000 gallons a day instead of 20,000. And so that's where our research program is going that needs funding, Brian. Oh. Yeah, they have been paying for it. But the big deployments which really got the state of Kentucky on board was tornadoes in western Kentucky in December of 21. That's the Paducah, Mayfield area down in the very toe of Kentucky. And then just months later in eastern Kentucky, they had a 1,000-year flood. And multiple counties had their systems out of operation for months. So the first one, Graves County, that's Mayfield, Kentucky. We had 2 different wild carts operating, providing water. That's a mobile shower there on the corner where the wild cart was treating water and sending it directly to the mobile shower. The other picture is where people could come in, bring their own cans, and fill the water up. And the state of Kentucky, the Department of Water, the Kentucky Department for Public Health, they were there on site. They approved the use of it. That's really the biggest bottleneck in all this, is that there's nothing in the state law, very little in the Safe Drinking Water Act, as to how do you permit a device like this for 30 days. Normally it's got to go through all kinds of approval processes, or a water utility has to get approval to treat water, whatever the technology is. So Kentucky is really taking the lead nationally in pulling together how it can be used and be written in to their emergency response protocols. So here is a tanker. This is a tanker bringing water in. The cart's treating it. Picture there. Here's a big tanker truck. This is another church outside of Mayfield and a mobile kitchen. So we had different carts, different locations at different times. The 2 carts were in like 4 different locations over a 2-week period. Then the Eastern Kentucky flooding, this was 4 counties over southeastern Kentucky. And so what happens so often is that these areas, these are tanks that were being sold for agricultural use. And those were brought onto the site. Water is often tanked in, or you pump whatever water is left in the pipes. In the city of Cincinnati, you'd probably have 2 days worth of water just sitting in the pipes, even if you didn't treat any more. So you got that much water you can deal with. But you had the Rural Water Association, you had the state of Kentucky, you had NGOs coming in, and they were scattered all over southeast Kentucky for 2 to 3 months. And so here we have the 4 different locations where the wild cart was located. People, one place it was operating for almost 3 months. And the roads are just totally gone. People were coming in, getting a shower once a week, filling their jugs, and then going back home. And so this is where the idea of a lily pad. If you think of a pond with lily pads kind of scattered about, a decentralized approach, that's where we're going with the state of Kentucky. What we're doing now with WaterStep is that they have 2 disaster response trailers. That's a 26-foot trailer, and it can hold 3 wild carts. And all the tubing, fittings, connections, extra technology, extra filters that can go on site and serve as a hub for those types of deployments. I mentioned a lily pad, and then the state of Kentucky. And so what's going on in Kentucky now is that between the 28 carts that the prisons have, and there was some federal funding available, the state of Kentucky is putting together about 20 more carts, and each one of those circles is kind of a water utility that's going to have a cart. So you can see there's a tornado or something in this area, within hours, you can have 5, 6 of these carts all on site and treating water within hours instead of days. Now you're lucky something happens, it might take 3 days to get on ground treating water. And so now this is our lily pad, and the state of Kentucky is getting ready to sign officially how that gets incorporated into their emergency response planning. And we did a survey of all the EPA region, state drinking water agencies in Region 5. That's Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, probably Wisconsin, Minnesota. And it was almost an identical answer. We're not set up to do that. We've never had a mobile system in emergency response. So getting over that hurdle is probably where hopefully Kentucky can take the lead. Here's how we did it here. Now you try it, Ohio or Indiana or whatever. And right now, in 2 weeks, I'm taking a wild card out to Region 7 EPA, which is Kansas City. And they're going to keep it for a couple months, play with it, and train their folks on it. And hopefully they can get out there and have them ready to go. Another part of this lily pad is if hospitals, prisons, nursing homes, if they have these in reserve. Nursing homes, you watch these hurricane stories, and they're moving the old folks out of the nursing homes, just a super big problem. Well, if they can batten down there, have safe water, and ride the storm out, that might be a better option. And I'm happy to entertain any questions. Go over any part of the cart. Testing for water. We use a swimming pool kit. That's all we use. Now the state, they will come take samples and take it back to their labs. But on site, put a drop of water in here, put your water, treated water, get a nice yellow color, you've got chlorine.
That was part of my question, that what kind of testing, or you said there really wasn't laws. Is there any testing required? Is there any testing that you guys do before you ship it out to make sure everything's good?
Yeah,
after so many gallons, you change out filters? Do you have requirements for that?
Yeah, the first part of that question that is really local health department, how they want to test it. You know, there's been other carts that have been shut down because the local board of Department of Health didn't trust it. They didn't know what it was. Yeah, it said, no, you're not using that. State of Kentucky takes samples and they take it back to their lab. They do a 24-hour test and then they say, yeah, you're good to go. In terms of operating or changing filters, that's when the pressures get high or the flow gets reduced, you know your filter's plugged up. You know, the Ohio River, I plugged one of those filters in about 30 minutes. You know, the Ohio River is one of the toughest rivers to clean because of the algae and the small, little slick, slimy particles. You know, they just don't settle. Can't get rid of them without lots of chemicals. And this whole thing is designed not to be chemicals. I mean, there's no tools. Everything is hand tightened or quick connects, just snap fittings. This is our stinger. This goes into the bladder tank. Treated water goes in, extends into the bladder tank, and at the same time, you can pull water out to distribute it. So you're recirculating, mixing the bladder tank with one device, and then you can take your samples off of here. This is a quick connect, just these little, that way you don't have to have wrenches or anything. Just do it by hand. So this is just another little gizmo that came out of this.
I got one. Is there a shelf life from manufacturer to whenever? Like, how long can it sit unused in a covered area?
Forever.
Cool.
The big thing is when you're done using it, you just dry it out. You drain it. There are all kinds of different fittings. You can open them up. And the way we dry it is you get a shop vac. Turn it on, blow the water out. Dry it out. That way, if it does get cold, if you're in an unheated warehouse, the water doesn't freeze and break things. But the chlorine gas generator, the bleach maker, they've been around the world. They've never been replaced. I mean, there's just nothing to break. So yeah, we know they've been lasting they've been out in the world for 20 years.
Yeah, I had a question about the filters. You answered that they can get plugged up pretty quick. Are they able to be cleaned and reused, or how
Depends.
consumable are they?
It depends. Most filters, you know, the companies want to sell filters. So they have to be replaced. You know, it might be 30 or 40 bucks a filter. And so if it lasts 30 minutes, that's a problem. If they last a week, you know, if you're on city water that's been maybe contaminated or compromised, they're going to last for weeks. Some filters, you can clean them. You soak them overnight in a solution or hose them off. This filter right here, you just take it out and hose it off and put it right back in. But it's only like a 50 micron, so you're only going to get the big chunks out of the water. Bacteria or pathogens might be 3 microns or 10 microns. They're going to go through here. So you're going to have to get a tighter filter that may or may not be cleanable. We did some out at the Bolton plant here in Cincinnati, the groundwater site, and the filters had been contaminated in Ohio River water, and they said they weren't to be reused. Well, we soaked them, we hosed them off, and we got about 75-80% efficiency out of them. So in a pinch, you could reuse them maybe a couple times before they no good anymore.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, we're all experts now.
Yeah, come on by. We can show you the cart up close here. And then by the time you're done, you can probably get a continuing education credit and operate a water treatment plant.
All right. Excellent. Those of us that are in the room, we can take a look afterwards. But thank you so much for coming and talking about that. That was very informative. Science on Tap is a monthly science education outreach program in partnership with Radio Artifact and Urban Artifact. Thank you all for coming. We have this event the first Wednesday of the month. Next event will be on Wednesday, October 2nd in the area of urban planning. I'm finalizing the details and we'll get that posted as soon as I confirm all that information. I am looking for speakers and topics for next year, so if you have any suggestions, let me know. Thank you all for coming.